Hello, today we're going to be going over patch 15.2. This is going to be reviewing and giving my takes and opinions on some of the changes that are coming to the set of TFT. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe because it does help me out as a TFT content creator. We reached our 10,000 sub goal giveaway. Later in the video, I will be giving instructions, so make sure to stay tuned if you want to enter the RP giveaway for that. And then additionally, I also have the new Fenriba Gaming VODs channel, which has daily gameplay VODs if you want to also check that out. But anyways, let's go through it. Now note, these are official from the Riot website, so basically it got posted a little bit earlier today, and I kind of tried to make it a little bit nicer to look at least for part of it. But we're going to go through all of it, go through all the changes and talk about it. I'll still do a top comps and final notes on live day, which is going to be tomorrow actually. The only reason I'm not going to say like best comps right now is I want to have first-hand experience playing it a little bit in the morning. I'll play a little bit and then give you guys the update on what I think are the best comps tomorrow, so stay tuned for that as well. I know you guys like those videos. In terms of the brief overview, this is just like the big cluster if you want to just see. In general, there's been some buffs to some of the weaker units in general, some of the forecasts that haven't been performing as well, and then there's been nerfs to some of the more egregious stuff, namely like the Gangplanks and the Sorks and the Prodigies and the Crews, some of those things. And then there's also a lot of adjustments, but we're going to go through everything through these slides as well. In terms of general system changes, this one's big if you're like really in tune with how things are working. But basically, now with power-ups, if you see a power-up offered on a champion, it's only excluded on that champion only, so you can no longer tailor power-ups. What do I mean by that? If you didn't know, something that you could have done in the past is you can take a unit that's of a similar class, you can use the power-up on one unit. For example, use the power-up on Ezreal, see the power-up, then sell the Ezreal so I get the power up back, and then use it on Syndra. This was particularly important for tailoring. Basically, there was a bad luck protection that if you used a power up on a unit, then you wouldn't be offered those same power ups, and that was tied to like the class or the type of unit. So if you had two caster units, for example, the ones that you would see on Ezreal that are usually shared with Syndra would not be there. Why was that important? It basically allowed you to eliminate some of the power-ups that you might not want before having to use the remover on the main unit that you're upgrading. And also, if there were unique power-ups, for example, with Syndra, she has Rising Chaos. It's unique to Syndra only. You have a greater chance of hitting it because you tailor out the ones that are non-unique in that particular scenario. Now it will only work on the same unit. I do not know if it will work on a same unit if you have a second copy on bench. That's going to be required testing on the day of. But in general, it's just to remove that level of complexity. If you didn't know about it, don't worry about it. If you knew about it, just know that it doesn't exist anymore. You can't tailor with a different unit. Generally, just to make things a little bit less like crazy and like niche, abusing like the way the mechanic worked. Additionally, there's going to be a lot of new encounters. Encounters in general have been a little bit bleh, I found. Like, there's not too many, and I felt like a lot of times I was just getting, like, prismatic after prismatic after prismatic, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. There's a couple of more tame ones and maybe some more fun ones. There's going to be 3-cost start, where you start with a random 3-cost. Upgraded start, where you start with a 2-star 1-cost. Augment round swap, where you're swapping the augment rounds. I'll try and pick a color that's a little bit more visible. Maybe this blue. Here we go. Let's use this blue for outline. Earlier power snacks. This one's a little bit interesting because you basically get offered a power up on 2-6. There's a couple of power ups that kind of fade away later in the game, so some of the scaling ones. This can actually allow you to have potentially double scaling. There's also the star student, which comes to mind, which if you have 2-star students, it can give you XP every single round. So that's something that could help you to tempo very aggressively. So there are a couple situations where this might be really important, but at the same time, it will also be really powerful for like early committing lines, like reroll, stuff like that you can have power-ups that potentially can scale. Just keep it in mind. There's going to be some nuances there. Then there's grand finals. It says you're on your own. I'm assuming this just means no encounter. I'm not sure exactly. Beach party, where you get a beach ball. Not sure what that means, but hopefully it's going to be fun. Regal rumble, where carousels have more competitors. I'm assuming it's going to be like those hack carousels where they just have more units on the carousel. I wasn't a big fan of those ones, but we'll see how it's implemented this time around. And then we have winner circle, that after, if you make it to top 4, you get 2 gold and component anvil. So it allows like the last top 4 players to maybe like duke it out with a little bit of extra resources. So we'll see how those ones work. I think in general they seem like a good mixture of some more for fun and also some like pretty like, you know, mild looking encounters. So I'm on board. Now we're going to start going through the traits. So in terms of traits, the first one that I want to talk about is Crystal Gambit. So Crystal Gambit is getting a lot of reworks. This one's actually a little bit frustrating for me as a content creator because my Crystal Gambit video is one of my more popular ones, and now I'm gonna have to like redo part of it. I'll probably make an updated comment or something on the video, or maybe I'll make a separate video to update. I don't know what I'm gonna do about it, but one of the big things is that now the cash out rounds is changing from 4 to 3. This is to make it so that you have like a little bit more control, as they were saying in the official patch notes. Instead of having to commit to like a Crystal Gambit and getting your cash out or double down every 4 rounds, now it's every 3 rounds. What this means is that you can probably do like a a Crystal Gambit and then like a double down and a second double down will now be 9 rounds. So basically, if you're watching like the Crystal Gambit guide, a lot of times, because it was in sections of 4, a lot of times people would say started on 2-3 Crystal Gambit, because that way you would get your cash out on 3-7, which is the neutral round. Now that it's 3 rounds, instead of it being 8 rounds until your main cash out after 1 double down, you're going to want to do it with 2 double downs and be 9 rounds, which means that you're just going to start on 2-2 to cash out on 3-7. So you just want to have it in 1 turn earlier. For most things, it's not going to matter. It's mostly for optimizations here. But in general, it's just going to feel a little bit nicer that you're not going to have to commit so deeply to Crystal Gambit for like a larger amount of turns. You can actually cash out after 6 turns, which is pretty much like 1 stage or close to 1 stage, which is pretty nice. However, they're also kind of nerfing some of the low cap version of Crystal Gambit and buffing some of the high cap versions of it, or kind of like reworking it, I would say. Basically, with 3 Crystal Gambit, now they're making it so you get less gems per loss. However, on the stage 3 and stage 4, they're increasing the multiplier. So playing Crystal Gambit long term, you can get some of those crazier cash outs. Specifically, the stage 4 multiplier is going back to being really high. So lose streaking or losing on stage 4 and doing some of those weird shenanigans could actually give you some insane cash outs potentially. Some big nerfs are coming to 5 Crystal Gambit, however. The kill thresholds, they're actually changing it, so it's getting oh wait, no, this is actually a buff, I think, right? Like, it's getting less kills, so excuse me for the discoloration, I misdid it. But they're nerfing some of the cash outs. So now like Flicker Blade, for example, which was an Ornn artifact, is now changing to Lucky Item Chest and 10 gold, which is a significant nerf. There's a bug that fixes an empty reward that you get on 5 Crystal Gambit, but then 7 Crystal Gambit now is no longer accelerating 5-piece kill count, and the damage amp for 7 Crystal Gambit is getting nerfed. In general, it's a rework. It's not necessarily strictly a nerf. This one's a mistake. This is like a little bit of a buff. Like, you get some of the cash outs a little bit earlier, but I'm unsure if they're changing the loot table, so that's just like something they'll have to check afterwards. But in general, some of the more risky cases, you're going to get a little bit more of a reward, which I think was one of the problems with Crystal Gambit, or how it felt. And then also, like, if you have like the high cap spat, like 7 Crystal Gambit that felt like an instant win, that's going to be cut down a little bit with some of these 7 Crystal Gambit nerfs. So just keep in mind, it's just like a little bit reworked. The main thing is just this 4 to 3. That's like the big change that I think you have to take away going into this. Next, let's go through the other traits. Here I try to put some emblems here to make it look a little bit prettier. But basically, Edgelord is getting buff 5 AD or 5% AD on the 6-piece Edgelord, hopefully making that a little bit more playable. This paired with some buffs to some of the actual units could likely mean that those comps are going to be a little bit more popular, so we'll see. Heavyweight is also getting a buff, so the HP percentage is getting increased by 5. This is pretty substantial because a lot of units also do have really good scaling on their HP, and it might make the 6 heavyweight trait a little bit more prevalent as a frontline, because right now it seems a bit meh compared to some of the others. Prodigy is getting a small nerf in terms of the amount of mana generation. It's strictly to the 4 and 5 Prodigy. You're getting a little bit less mana. However, they are buffing the healing, so it feels like a little bit of a rework. I don't think it's going to greatly affect the Prodigy comps that are playing around 5 Prodigy currently. Sorcerers, everybody knows it's really strong. It's getting a nerf, 10 AP. Sorcerers is kind of weird. Like, every single set, there's a trait that kind of exists like this, where it just gives you a bunch of AP, and they always flick on and off between being like really broken or like not really relevant. It basically just comes down to like how much burst damage it can do, because it's really like a burst damage style comp. Right now, Sorks is really strong. I think they'll still be a playable comp. I just think it won't be like as hard forceable. This nerf doesn't seem that massive to me. However, just 10 AP, I feel like, you know, if it's not paired with some additional nerfs, I still think the comp is going to be quote unquote strong. But it's really hard to say, because so much of Sork is like the snowball effect of killing units and then getting the Sork procs that allows you to kill the later units. So we're hoping that this nerf makes it so that unless you have like an upgraded, like more reliable setup for your comp, that the Sork board won't just like steamroll everybody as it's kind of been doing already. We'll see how it goes. Star Guardian, Seraphine bonus now is dropped from 5 to 4. That sounds like, I'm not sure exactly why this is happening, but like I think Star Guardian is not in the greatest of spots. So I would have liked to see Star Guardian buffs, but I think there is going to be a little bit of a Seraphine rework. So maybe like with the Seraphine rework, things will kind of work out that it's like kind of okay. There's also was a Jinx bug, if you didn't know about it, which they fixed via these patch notes, which we'll also talk about later. So maybe those two things as compensation make it a little bit better or a little bit more reliable. Next, we have the crew damage. So the ship damage, the base damage is getting dropped significantly. Crew was really strong if you were able to high roll into like the Twisted Fate, as well as have all of your 4 units 3-starred. So this to me makes it feel like crew is not going to be that commanding. I don't think it needed that much of a nerf. I felt like it was a very risky comp anyways. However, just be aware, this is going to make you a lot less stable in terms of your 3-star units that you hit. So, you know, play it from really good spots is what I would recommend. Next, we have Monster Trainer. So I think this is like a little bit of like a fix to how it worked, because I thought this is how it was intended to work before, but basically now each monster has its own XP tracked separately. I didn't know the XP was being shared before, because before when you would swap out a unit, you would lose its levels. So I didn't think it was a problem here, but basically now it tracks XP separately. And then the levels are saved when it's inactive. So if you swap in one monster versus another monster, it won't reset back to level 1. I don't see why you would want to do that. Maybe if it's like from mid game to late game, or like carries like swapping. But I think that if they're tracking their own XP separately, I feel like you want to all in on one of them to make sure that you get the max levels and scale them up effectively into late game. I don't think this is going to affect too much of how Lulu is played. I don't think there's going to be any shenanigans of like swapping based on fights or anything like that. Next we have 1 cost. Oh wait, sorry. The only thing that this maybe applies to is like rare candy shenanigans or whatever. Like there's the 1 power up that can help with that. But either way, I think it's gonna be more niche than crazy. Now let's go through some per unit changes. So we're gonna start with 1 cost and then work our way up to all the other costs of units. So we have Garen here. Garen's getting a buff. Basically, he would stack HP based on his potential. Now he's stacking more HP. This is like a 25% HP increase. Garen reroll or 3-star Garen might be a little bit more prevalent. We'll see how it goes. Kale here, I think, is catching a stray bullet. I think Kale is not that strong, and Kale is basically getting a... This feels like a pretty substantial nerf. So this is to her wave damage that scales off AP. She's getting nerfed all across the board. It's around like 10% nerf, which isn't that much, right? Like, you know, units can survive from worse, obviously. But it's not that great, because this is basically like all the damage that she does when you go to like level 6 as well as level 9. So it's a pretty substantial nerf, and I already think Kale is not that reliable as a comp to play around, but we'll see how things go. Right now, Kale has a really bad matchup into GP, like Gangplank, and Gangplank's like absurdly broken. He's obviously gonna get nerfed in a slide or two. We're gonna see that. So maybe with the GP nerfs, the Kale board might be a little bit more capable of making it to those high levels, but I think this just makes a risky line more risky, if that makes sense. Next we have Lucian. So Lucian, it's a little bit of like a nerf slash buff. 3-star Lucian is getting buffs, so I think it just makes it feel a little bit better if you have like a worth the wait Lucian, or maybe like a Lucian reroll line in some cases, because he was kind of a little bit mid. Now he's getting less mana refund on his 1 and 2-star variations. This was a pretty substantial part of his kit that made him a really reliable early game carry, but he's getting a buff to 3-star, getting a lot of mana refund, so this can actually be really, really powerful in some late game carry scenarios with Lucian. But of course, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think that he'll still behave and work as he has been doing, just like small tweaks and adjustments. Some 2 cost changes. So Mundo is getting less HP scaling. This is based on the AP stat, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, just make him a little bit less of an unkillable monster. This one's a little bit like crazy to me. Kai'Sa's getting a buff. Now, Kai'Sa wasn't super prevalent in the most recent patch, obviously because Gangplank GP has been very overbearing. But towards the end of it now, Kai'Sa stocks are kind of rising, and there's a lot of situations that if you have her early and you can actually scale her, she's actually pretty strong. So these buffs feel like a little bit like maybe she'll be like a really reliable or go-to style of comp in your rotation starting next patch. Of course, we'll see how things work out tomorrow, but with GP potentially not being as prevalent, Kai'Sa might have some breathing room to play like with a vertical front line where she's not getting sniped and actually scale up pretty effectively. Next, we have Katarina. So Katarina is getting nerfs just to her damage that scales off her AP. Additionally, I don't know if this is necessarily a strict nerf or not. Katarina now dashes to her current attack target instead of the lowest health target on the board if she has no targets. This was specifically, if you guys watch like the TikToks or the YouTube shorts or maybe the videos, I think like everybody knows this as like the Leduc tech. The idea was that before there was like a thing that you can do with Katarina where you would trap her in a corner, right? Like if you trapped Katarina in the corner and she didn't have a target, then she would teleport to the enemy backline once she got her cast off, because she would default to lowest HP unit. So it would just go like infinite range and just go to the lowest HP unit, which was typically a backline unit and not a frontline tank. Now instead she's just going to go to a frontline unit, which makes this like little niche gimmicky kind of thing completely irrelevant, which, you know, it kind of already is super niche and not super relevant, but now it's just like they're just removing that just so it's not going to be a problem. Next we have Kabuko. So Kabuko is getting his stun duration a little bit nerfed. Kabuko has been really strong, and part of the reason why GP was so broken was Kabuko with the 4 mentor and just having the infinite stun. Additionally, Kabuko's stun now no longer ignores some form of CC immunity. No longer ignores. This should be a nerf as well. Excuse me for the discoloration. I misread it the first time I did it. So this should also be red. That it no longer ignores. Wait, it's like a double negative. I'm getting lost. His stun no longer ignores. Okay, that's a nerf. Yeah, it's just a nerf. He doesn't ignore CC immunity anymore, which I didn't know that existed, but now we know. Okay, so nerf. This is not a buff. Don't get worried that Kabuko. Don't get worried that you see green with Kabuko. It's a nerf, okay? And that's fine. No big changes to Kabuko. I think it's fine. There might be some other lines that show up with Kabuko because I still think he's going to be really reliable as a tank just based on the GP line. So if there's like another alternative to GP after nerfs, or if GP is still playable, I still expect Kabuko reroll to be intact with these changes. Next, we have Gangplank. So this is the big offender. I think everybody kind of has been waiting for Gangplank to get nerfed. If you've been playing a lot, there's just a lot of broken interactions with Gangplank just being like an infinite, like giga monster of a unit. And a lot of times, like, a lot of that was based on like 2 parts of his kit. One was his damage, which you can attribute to his attack speed or to his like just base damage numbers. Part of it was that he gains gold off of kills, which just allowed you to just like tempo and have like insanely good spots if you're carrying around Gangplank. And then the other thing was that with stretchy arms, or with range in particular, he would basically snipe and kill enemy carries. So if the fight lasted like more than like 10 seconds, you basically lost, because you would always kill the backliners before the frontliners with certain broken combinations of artifact or fruit power-ups. So in order to deal with that, let's see what they did. The first thing is that they're nerfing his damage. Now, to 1 and 2 star Gangplank, it's like around like 10%ish, but it's a pretty substantial nerf to 3 star Gangplank. It's like well over 10%. So this is a pretty substantial damage nerf to the Gangplank, which is already just a good sign. However, this alone wouldn't be good. The other part is this red paragraph. Gangplank spell search range is now always 2 hexes rather than growing with range. So I'm assuming this also applies to artifacts as well as to like the stretchy arm combinations of him. And if a no valid target exists, he will fire at his current target, which is actually massive, meaning that he won't just randomly hit like a crazy backline shot and kill a random unit out of nowhere. Instead, he's just going to be playing around like his range and playing around the units that he's targeting. This means now you can position around him. You don't have to worry about him sniping your backline. He will be locked onto your front line if your backline carry is far enough away. And if he grows his range, he won't have like the execute and the one-shot potential of him just casting his ult and killing your backline. So this is a pretty substantial nerf to the current situation that he's in, and I think that it will make him more in tune with other 2-costs. I don't think Gangplank reroll is like completely dead. I think that he'll still be playable, similar to how when he was played with what's it called, with duelists, right? A big portion of Gangplank's kit granting the gold is still going to make him a relevant mid-game unit, and could also help in some high cap versions of boards. However, it's not going to be obnoxious. I think this is enough to make it so that not everybody in your lobby is playing Gangplank anymore. So that's a good change. Next we have Rakan. So this is a max mana nerf, which just means that he's going to cast a little bit less frequently, right? When you change the denominator of the mana, it just means it takes him longer to get a second ult off, because he basically has to generate more mana in order to cast his ult. This will also decrease his tankiness by a good margin, because a lot of his ult is like healing, and that's what makes him kind of go infinite as like a really strong front line if you're playing around Prodigies or the Battle Academia boards. Next, we have some 3-cost changes. So Darius getting buffs to his damage. With the heavyweight buffs as well as Kai'Sa buffs, I expect to see Darius Kai'Sa reroll being a little bit more prevalent, and also Darius just being prevalent. One thing with Darius though was that a lot of times you were really looking for the fruit where he would absorb the his secondary ally, because then he would just get infinite stats. I forget what it's called, Fusion Dance, I believe, right? Fusion Dance Darius was like a common thing. Now that you can't really tailor the the fruits as easily because they removed that, it might be a little bit harder to like make him pop off in those crazy ways like you might have seen like in PB and stuff like that. But this is still a pretty substantial change that I think he will be a potential reroll line, especially with some of the other changes that occurred. Next, we have some changes to Kog'Maw. So Kog'Maw getting more attack speed per cast. This is like his level 15 plus bonus, if I'm not mistaken. And then also getting more on-hit damage, maybe making Kog'Maw a viable line or some sort of like unit that you can play, because he was pretty mid otherwise. And then we also have Rammus, who's getting more shield AP, and then they just fixed his AI a little bit so that now he is, instead of breaking his ties with like a further unit, he's basically with a closer unit. I don't know if it's a buff or a nerf, because I don't play enough Rammus to know, but it's just something to make into account. How he does his tie breaks now has been altered. Next, we have Senna. So Senna's getting a mana buff, which means that she's going to get her cast off a little bit more frequently. Might make her a little bit more reliable as a carry. And then Ziggs is getting a buff to his damage. So he has passive damage that scales off AP. So all his auto attacks are replaced with a little bouncing ball. He's getting a buff that feels pretty substantial. It's like over 10% across the board here. Like, you know, it's 20% on the 3-star at minimum, right? That seems like a really good uptick on the damage. He also can be played really effectively with strategist lines, so he has a lot of damage amp built in. Pair that with some crit. You don't even need to have like a full ult crit, because he even has like the he can even benefit from just his autos doing a bunch of crit as well. Really nice, really cool. As an auto attacker, so just keep it in mind. He might be like a lot more reliable when you're playing around crew, which could compensate for the crew nerf in general that we just saw from before. We reached our sub goal for an RP giveaway. So if you want to enter, please make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Then you're going to have to join the Discord that is linked on each of the descriptions in each of my videos, as you see here. This will bring you to the Wolfgang Discord, which is what I use for go live notifications as well as any other discussions if you want to be a part of the community. But if not, basically if you scroll down under TFT, there's a TFT giveaway channel. And as you can see, there's going to be this best turtle bot that says the TFT RP giveaway that I just put up today. You have to just click this button that says enter giveaway. If you're having trouble finding it, it's actually pinned from the top in the top right corner, the pinned message. You can go to it and then click the enter giveaway button. This is going to be for 1,380 RP, or around $15. And just to let you guys know, if you're not on NA servers, I sometimes have difficulty transferring the funds over. So instead, it will be an Amazon gift card, or I can give you a coupon for merch store or a custom art piece, whatever you desire. But thank you for supporting me, and to many more giveaways in the future. Let's go through some 4-costs now. So we have Ashe. Ashe just getting some buffs. She's been a little bit I think Ashe really pops off with both Flicker Blade and like a Radiant Guinsoo in certain cases. So I think she was still playable before for like some easy top 4s. This might make her just a little bit more reliable outside of those Exodia situations. Next, we have a Jarvan bug fix, which basically just means that he's getting less mana in some cases. I put it as a nerf, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just like a bug fix. However, there is a pretty substantial bug fix to Jinx, that now her attack speed passive is now properly updating with her ability power and star level. I felt like this was something that was like a little bit awkward with Jinx, because in the stats, like certain items that normally shouldn't be that good on her, like Gwinsu, were starting to look like okay on her. And I was a little bit confused why. It's probably because of this. And it just might make it so that her builds are a little bit more clear now. When I made the Star Guardian board, I talked about how she has like multiple builds that can work. Now it might just make it so their items are a little bit more not specific, I would say, but just like work a little bit better. Additionally, like the attack speed was like a large portion of her kit, so having it scale properly is actually going to be really substantial. This is probably also why, if you ever played 3-star Jinx, she was like one of the worst 3-star units in the game, and she didn't do anything because she just didn't upgrade with her star level. So when you 3-starred her, she just like was as strong as a 1-star with in terms of the attack speed at least. Next, we have a small Karma nerf, which basically just changes like her targeting, that it usually now prioritizes frontline rather than backline. It's not that big of a nerf at all, but they did nerf Sorks, and they are buffing a lot of other 4 costs as well as some other low cost units. So we're gonna have to see how the whole Karma Sork board goes into live tomorrow. I think that Sorks are still going to be playable and they're still going to be strong. So, you know, if you're a Sork enjoyer, that's fine. If you're a Sork hater, I think that it won't be as crazy. I think that you'll have to have a decent spot to compensate for some of the lower damage output that you might have with the Sork nerf that's coming into play. But I don't think that she's going to be all that different. I still think that it's going to be an AP line that you can play towards. Something here, big buffs we got to Volibear. So Volibear is getting base AD changes. Base AD is always massive. 5 base AD. I've seen multiple patches where that changes a unit from being one of the worst in the game to being one of the most broken in the game. So this is actually a pretty substantial change, even though it's a small number. So just keep that in mind. Additionally, the main spell is getting a pretty substantial buff as well, like over 10% or around 10%-ish. Actually, no, it's good amount over 10%. Just good chunks of damage here for his base spell. And then his bonus slam, which he does afterwards, is getting a little bit of a nerf, but I don't think that matters at all. Don't worry about seeing red. These changes are massive. Volibear might be one of the best 4 costs in the game. We're going to see how it plays out. There's also the edgelord buffs. So in high cap versions where you can play 6 edgelord, that might also be crazy. Volibear also has really high cap with Luchador because of Braum as well. So you have lots of, like, he has good synergies. He has a really decent kit. He has good power-ups as well. Like, there's a lot of ones that are really powerful, like Serious Slam, that just like gives him great potential. Even like stretchy arms on him could be good because he just wraps backline really nicely. All of that with these buffs, keep it in mind, keep him in your back pocket. He might be a little bit of a menace coming up. Next, we have some changes to 5 cost. So Braum is getting a small buff to his damage, which I don't think matters at all. The big nerfs, though, these are pretty substantial. So now Braum's Poro fans will now go with his star level. So 1-star Braum before, if you won a combat, would give you 2 Poro fans, and each Poro fan basically decreases the amount of damage that you take. This is pretty substantial because if you had Braum in when you had a decent board or you hit a Braum early, you can start racking up ways to save your HP, which would then give you like multiple extra lives. You can often scam placements. It was a pretty frustrating thing. Now it scales with star level, so a 1-star Braum is going to be half as effective as a 2-star Braum, which I think is a good change, just to make it so that if you're playing towards Braum or if you're in a better spot, you get more rewarded than if you just find a random Braum wherever. Additionally, the Poro fans now that are going to be lost if you when you lose around are not going to be 75%, it's going to be 100%. This is pretty substantial because this eliminates his potential to be like a multi-life saver, if that makes sense, because like a lot of times like you get hit with the Poros, sometimes you accumulate like 10 Poros or more, and then you take very little damage, but then you still have like residual Poros left over because of the 75%, which then saves you a little bit of extra HP the next turn. No, now it's all gone, which I think is a good change. I think that, you know, treat them as if they're all getting used up, taking the damage, and I think that would be a little bit more healthy. I still think that this trait is going to be really strong. Like Braum's still gonna, the effect is still worthwhile to play. It's not like it's like, oh, now I don't have to play Braum anymore, but it just makes it a little bit less obnoxious. Now Gwen, she's getting like a small nerf. It's hard to say exactly how big the nerf is, so I didn't want to like paint the whole thing red, but basically when she does her passive, instead of doing a certain amount of damage in a cone, she now does damage in a cone with an addition that's split between the enemies, and she does like single target damage as well. So she has like a split amount of damage. So basically if she's targeting less units in her range, she will do more damage to the specific target with her auto attacks. Now, is that a nerf or a buff? it's mostly a nerf to range Gwen. I think normal Gwen, you won't notice too much of a difference. But in the past, when Gwen had like the Giga Scissors of Doom, you know, you would get something like whatever, like this, and she would like hit the whole board because she got Sniper's focus, right? This is mostly like an artifact interaction. If you ever saw like Sniper's Gwen, the scissors are like the size of the whole board, or RFC Gwen, or Fishbone's Gwen. Those are the things where I think this is trying to deal with, because now if she's targeting more units, she won't do as much damage to like the whole board. Instead of doing like a flat damage to everybody in the cone, she's doing like damage to one unit that she's targeting and then split amongst the other units. So it's a nerf to range Gwen in particular. Seraphine, of course, we're going to see some buffs. She's one of the worst units in the game. Just is what it is. But Seraphine's base ability damage is getting increased, which is great. You want her to do a bunch of damage, so we'll take it. Her power friendship multiplier is also getting increased, so that's something to look forward to. So she's going to get more scaling off of all of the items that you give her and stats in general. And then additionally, if Seraphine's ability, if she got killed while she was throwing her spirit bomb, the spirit bomb would fizzle and not do any damage. Now the damage is still going to do it. And it scales with the time channeled. So if she dies and this spirit bomb isn't fully out, it's going to do some damage still. This is pretty substantial because one of the biggest problems there was her cast timing, in addition to how long it took her to actually get to the ult in the first place because she has a huge mana threshold. Is this going to make Seraphine broken? I don't think so. Maybe this might be. I'm not sure because it is scaling on all stats, so it's hard to say. But Star Guardian's in like a little bit of an awkward spot where I feel like it's really dependent on like Star Guardian +1. And I'm not sure if this is going to make it so that she's like really, really broken. And especially if you're not playing a Star Guardian type of board, I don't think she's going to gain enough stats that way. However, this does make her a little bit more consistent in those boards, so we'll just have to see. It's hard to say how much this last thing is really going to affect her. To me, I think she's still going to be like a mid 5 cost and like situationally strong, but not always strong. Kind of like how she is now, but like a little bit better. Anyways, so that's it for my PowerPoint right now. For the rest of the changes, this is the actual patch notes that you would see on the website. We're going to go through it on the patch notes just because it's like a lot of text and I couldn't really find a way to neatly like show it and highlight things on my slideshow. So instead we're just going to go through it here. Basically, we're just going to go through the augments. I'm going to read through all the changes, and then there's some emblem augment changes, then there's a couple little item changes, and then power up changes as well. So we're just going to go through all of those really briefly and really fast, but like I said, it's just like a lot of text, so I'm just going to read through it. Backup dancers, the AS is getting decreased, so it's getting a small nerf. Bronze for life, small nerf. Bronze for life 2, also nerf. This one feels a little bit more substantial though, so Bronze for life has been really strong this set, so this is something just to keep in mind, especially for the prismatic. That might not be really good unless you have a really good board. Chaos Evolution, ADAP is getting dropped. This one was pretty strong, and the durability is getting dropped. Deadlier Blade scaling now is increasing from 5 takedowns to 4 takedowns, which is pretty substantial. And then the Deadlier Caps is also getting a little bit better off. I feel like these two augments were pretty good if you needed these items, so now they just might be a little bit better in certain spots. Double Trouble is getting increased. Given the Chair Mundo is getting buffed. This was the hero augment for Mundo. It's pretty shit. I would not recommend taking it. I don't even know if these buffs are enough to make it better, but they are substantially good increases, so maybe we can try it out. I'll still be skeptical about it. Gold Destiny. So all of the Destiny augments, I'm assuming, are going to get nerfed. They just gave way too much gold, so now the gold is just going to be decreased on all of these gold Destinies, and I assume the same will happen with the Prismatic and the Silver Destinies. Golden Quest Twisted Fate Artifact is now changing from Wit's End to Static Shiv. I'm not sure if that's a buff or a nerf. I think both these items were really good on him. I think it might be a little bit of a nerf because I think Wit's End was a little bit better, but it's hard to say. Grand Slam now also gives Luchadors attack speed, and the Grand Slam champion now, they're giving you a Dr. Mundo instead. And then the Grand Slam initial jump damage is now going to 300% attack damage instead of base AD, which could work because I think this applies the scaling, so this could be a lot stronger depending on what items you have built. Knuckle Dusters used to gives loot, but it never really said it, but I think that's a bug fix that they're going to adjust the tooltip. But the loot is getting dropped significantly, and then the item chance is getting dropped significantly. I still think this Knuckle Dusters is going to be very strong. It's one of the stronger hero augments. You're just going to get less loot, and I think that wasn't that big of a deal anyways. Last second save is getting a big nerf. This was one of the strongest augments in the game. 9 lives is now exclusive with Kingslayer. This was obnoxious if you had that combination. And now it's granting less rewards. 9 lives basically put you at 9 HP and then gave you a reward every time you lost life. And you basically only lose 1 HP if you lost a round. It was pretty strong because it gave you Carousel Prio in addition to a bunch of rewards. But it was also a little bit risky. They're just making it a little bit less powerful, so just keep that in mind. Power Friendship, this is the augment that you play with Star Guardians. Star Guardians wasn't very great, but this augment was extremely broken if you had the opportunity for it, because it just gave you so much mana regen, which was really powerful. They're dropping the mana regen in half, but then they're also giving you some extra resist, so just keep it in mind. If you have this with Star Guardians, it might be an okay spot for Star Guardians. Prismatic Destiny, yep, as we figured, is going to drop the gold a little bit. Protagonist now no longer gives the component anvil, so just a little bit of a nerf there. Ring the Bell didn't work properly, now it works properly. Silver Destiny, plus, and regular is all giving you less gold. This is what I was saying before. These ones were really broken. You pretty much always click them because the risk reward was just so good for it. Slice of Life now ends after receiving 1 5 cost. Before it used to be 2 5 costs, so they're just making it a little bit worse, but it felt really strong. Just give you so many units, so much gold, so much power. Solo Leveling getting a small nerf because it was really strong. Starfall Nico, this one I don't understand, by the way. They're changing the ability duration 2 seconds to 1.75 seconds. Now, I don't know if this means that it's like a nerf. If it's a nerf, like she's gonna be like weaker because it's a number smaller, or if this means that she's just gonna cast faster, like when she's in the air, like she'll be able to generate mana better. Question mark? I don't know. I think that you wanted her to be in the sky as long as possible. That was my old idea, because like you wanted her just to live. So I don't know how this translates. I'm hoping it works out to be a buff, because this augment seems like shit. And I talk about it a little bit. I remember I had a video on it in PBE that I was talking about it, where it's like it's really hard because she's no longer a tank, so she doesn't gain mana from getting hit. So her builds and her abilities feel really awkward to be like a frontline carry in her current state. So I'm not sure, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm hoping it's a buff. Story of 7, 14 cash out now is now giving you less gold. This was like, you know, I don't really like this augment, but if you try it out, just know it's a little bit worse. Treasure Hunt, stage 6 and 7 chests are removed. Matches tooltip now, so that's good. And then Treasure Hunt, now they are nerfing it a lot. This was one of the most broken augments in the game. You can just force any reroll and you usually win the game with it. Now, instead of getting an artifact, you get an item. Tactician's Crown is removed and 2-star 5 cost is removed. And then the Artifact Anvil now is being a random artifact. These are substantial nerfs, but I still think this augment's going to be pretty strong. You just probably have to play an actual reroll line and not just like anything reroll. Because before you can just reroll literally anything and you got so many rewards that it was just broken. Now it's probably like you want to specifically play something that's good because you're not getting like these massive, crazy, like broken ass shit cash outs. Like here, no more masterworks, now it's just completed items. So a lot of things just got nerfed here, but it still gives you a lot of value for what it is. So I still think it's gonna be okay. Trickster's Treat, this was the one that I think made like infinite Cassantes, if I'm not mistaken, like where you get the Trickster's glass and stuff. It's getting disabled. I don't know why, probably because it was broken, but you know, like we'll see. These ones we're not going to go over that much, but basically these are the augments that give you an emblem. They're changing some of the items to be a little bit more widely applicable. So for example, Bastion Crown doesn't give you even shot anymore, now it gives you Crown Guard, so it's not like specific to one thing or another. And then there's some of them that are you're getting like a nerf to the unit, and the other ones you're getting a buff to like the items. I think these usually I try to avoid taking any of them. I don't think spatulas or any of these augments are particularly great to take, especially if it's one of the prismatic options. But if you're in need of a certain unit, just make sure to read the tooltips for all of them because they are getting adjusted. Items, Edge and I giving less attack speed. I think Edge and I has been one of the better items this set, so this is going to hurt a lot of different comps. Striker's Flail is now giving less attack speed as well. This item has been really good for a while. I'm a Striker's Flail enjoyer. Used to be a Guard Breaker enjoyer, but now I have to learn how to change the name because they did that to me. But either way, pretty substantial nerf because the attack speed was pretty nice to have on it. And then the Radiant Striker is also getting a small nerf to coincide with it. Power-ups, there's a couple things that they're changing. So they said like some of them were really strong, like Akali, Gwen, Katarina. Sorry, Akali, Gwen. Having hemorrhage was really powerful. It was one of Gwen's best and one of Akali's best, just because they do so much ability damage, and then it also does bonus true damage basically with it. It was kind of nuts. So yeah, I guess it's fine. Katarina no longer getting Hungry Hero. This one's just because it's really weird. And then Callista no longer getting Efficient. Lucian, Bullet Hell was really broken on him because he would basically fire more bullets and would get more mana refund if he missed. So they're getting rid of a broken option here. And then Shadow Claw and Rise, I didn't think it was that broken, but I guess it's like obnoxious enough that they're getting rid of it. Next we have some power-up changes. So All Out is getting nerfed a little bit. This was the specific Cassante one, which could hurt that board a little bit. Especially before, Cassante was like the best melee carry with this All Out setup with Akali. But between Akali not getting Hemorrhage and now All Out not being on Cassante, and also not being able to tailor, because before you need to get All Out on Cassante, so you would want to use your fruit on another tank, get rid of some of the tank setup so that you can get All Out on Cassante. So yeah, that's this is a little bit rough for that comp. And now with Volibear buffs, you might want to just play melee into Volibear in these types of setups, so we'll see how it goes. But that comp might be a little bit like awkward to get around now. Bullet Hell, one of the best in the game, just gave you like so much upfront damage, going from 35 to 30. I still think it's gonna be good on the units that you offer, that you get offered. Bullet Hell no longer always rounds up. Okay, this part is also really bad. So one of the biggest powers of Bullet Hell was that it always rounded up. I remember I mentioned it a while ago, especially in PBE. I was talking about it. This is a really substantial nerf. A lot of units really relied on the power up rounding up. For example, like Janna, for example, it would give her 6 instead of 5. Now it's probably gonna give her 5. So yeah, it is what it is. Golden Edge starting gold from 1 to 2. Hat Trick is getting buffed. This was the one that you infinitely can scale, so this might be a little bit more fun to play around. The Midas Touch now is a gold tracker. Pursuit Logic for safer dash is improved. Shadow Clone, the clone now has 30% less health, so sometimes the clone would actually take like a lot of hits to die, which could work really well defensively. Now it's just going to also be a little bit weaker on the HP side. Trickster now offered until stage 3, and then the Trickster damage amp is getting dropped a lot. This one was a broken fruit. Basically, you would drop a target dummy, gain damage amp, and dash to the back line. So this was kind of annoying. And now Unstoppable now only charges on combat start and takedown of current target. I think this, I'm not sure the exact interactions where this came into play. I don't think it's going to be too much of a noticeable difference, or this is a big nerf. I can't tell. But what comes to mind here is the Fishbones. I think this is to nerf Fishbones, right? I think if you look it up, there was like a TikTok or something where you would go Fishbones on a unit. So Udyr was in the TikTok that I saw. So Fishbones, basically when you retarget or you target random units, so then when you had Unstoppable, he would just continually dash every single time you retargeted something, and you would just get like instant knockups all the time. It was like some broken interaction. I think that's what they're primarily addressing here, but it could also just mean that you just do less Unstoppable dashes, so less stuns all around. Bug fixes. So oh boy, we'll just go through these fast. Last thing to go through. Fixed typo. Qual over quantity is exclusive of these, whatever. Knuckle Dusters now says that she drops loot. Fixed typo in 9 lives, saying Kennen can deal true damage. So I think this was like a bit of confusion before, like Kennen true damage versus not true damage, because I think Hemorrhage works really well on him for that reason, because he's doing like physical or whatever, but it's fine. Anima is embraced, changed. Learn from the best is clarified, whatever. Tag Expert grants baseline 5 AD, sure. Inner File, Critical Threat, and Solar Breath now work properly. I guess these didn't work properly. Anticipate 3-star, who cares? Anticipate 3-star, who cares? Battle Academia Prismatic no longer progresses when reinforcing in double up. I don't play double up. This is for Talker's Trial. 3 Juggernaut Lee Sin can fail to win combats. Okay, sure, that's a bug with 3-star Lee Sin. Ghost Cassante's all-out power-up will not enter all-out mode. Okay, cool. Yasuo would occasionally lead himself off the board. Okay, sure. Fix a typo and star power. Sure. Fixed a bug. LeBron wouldn't display damage numbers. Sure. I'm trying to see if there's anything that's like crazy. Like these are all like bugs, like just like visual, some of them are like not super important to me. This one, Braum sometimes unable to target Cassante, that's cool. Money Mech on wrong side on ghost boards, Colossal, whatever. Not done yet. You know what? I'm gonna leave this up for 10 seconds while I do my closing. You guys just read it. I don't see anything that's super crazy here. I think some of the other bugs in 15.b were already fixed. But either way, if you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching up until now. I know it was a lot of text. There were a lot of changes. Next time I'll try and do like these other parts on the actual website on the patch note videos. It's just there was way too many augments for me to reasonably do it. But in the future, if there's less augments that get adjusted, I will likely do them in the same format of like having like the previous and the new and the red and the green text. But either way, hopefully this was informative. Tomorrow we're going to do our best comps guides for the changes based on some playtest experience that I'm going to have starting tomorrow. Have fun. Hopefully you had an enjoyable day, and see ya. Bye-bye.